welcome to Ignite 2022, an industry-focused professional panel series. My name is Katherine Martucci. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Assistant Director for Career Education at DelVal University, and I will be your friendly Ignite facilitator. Today's panel features professionals from the wildlife research and conservation industry. As a reminder, if you enjoyed today's conversation, you can email cspd@delval.edu to connect one-to-one with any of our panelists. And you can also check out additional Ignite recordings on the CSPD SharePoint site, which will be linked in the video notes. All right, thanks so much. Without further delay, we will dive in. And I'd like to invite each of our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Diane Nickerson. I'm the director of the Mercer County Wildlife Center.
Hello, everyone. I'm Josh Loew. I graduated from DelVal in 2020 with my bachelor's degree in biology, and I currently work with New Jersey Fish and Wildlife as a wildlife technician.
Hey everyone, I'm Chrissy Lambert. I just graduated in May 2022 from DelVal, and I was studying conservation and wildlife management. And I've recently accepted a job offer with the USDA, the Department of Ag in Montana. So I will be starting that soon.
Hi, I'm Erica Miller. I'm a veterinarian with the Wildlife Futures Program, and my official title is I'm Field Operations Manager for the program.
And hi, I am Kathy Clark. I am a principal biologist with New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife, the Endangered Species Program.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much. So my first question is how and or when did you first learn about your current career choice or industry?
You might want to let somebody else go first on this one. I have a bachelor's of business administration in marketing and management and spent 15 years in the insurance industry. And then I found two baby squirrels on the ground in front of my house one day, and my neighbor sent me to the local rehabilitator with them. And 29 or 30 years later, here I am. But I quit my full-time job, went into deep abject poverty, worked as a volunteer for a few years, and then got the position I have now and have been there since. So how's that for circuitous?
Yeah.
That's amazing, because the theme that we always find with folks that work with animals is that they love animals and they get there one way or another. Go ahead, Josh.
So for me, I guess it's always kind of complicated to know exactly when you learned it. But the reality that I could even work with wildlife and promote conservation kind of came from a job posting on a bulletin board when I was in community college. The Cape May National Wildlife Refuge was offering an unpaid internship, and I applied for it, and I got accepted. And so it kind of put me into a whirlwind of working with wildlife. I got to work with horseshoe crabs and shorebirds and bats and invasive plants. And the staff there just really took me under their wing and helped me to get where I am today. And then, of course, growing up, I always was with wildlife and nature. I just couldn't get away from it. So.
I did 4-H for 6 years. I started it when I was 10, and that really started my love of working with animals. And I actually, when I came to DelVal, I came in with a major of large animal science. That's what I was going to be studying. And it was after a few classes, my freshman year going into my sophomore year, that I realized that I wasn't so sure if I wanted to spend X amount of years and money in veterinary school. And I wanted to be certain before I continued with that major. So I actually just went on the DelVal website and was continuing to look at other majors that they offered. And it was just through reading the course description and the major description that I was like, this sounds really cool. And why wouldn't I want to study something that I'm interested in? So it really was just through looking on the DelVal website and talking to people that were in the field that I really started to go in that direction. And I don't think I will turn back.
Okay. So I sort of stumbled into my current position as I stumbled into many of my previous positions. This one, I had done some temporary work with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. I had also been doing some teaching as an adjunct professor with the University of Pennsylvania Vet School. And so in 2019, the two organizations started a collaborative project, the Wildlife Futures Program. And since I was familiar with both, when they reached a point in 2020 that they were starting to hire some employees, they approached me and basically asked me if I wanted to come work for them, which is a nice way to skip all the interviews and all that stuff. So that's how I ended up where I am now.
I've known Erica for a long time, and I know her story is much longer than that.
Get into that later.
I feel very lucky to work in my position with New Jersey Fish and Wildlife in the Endangered Species Program. I started out in college, my freshman year at University of Delaware in animal science because I was thinking pre-vet. And the great thing, one of the great things about University of Delaware is that freshmen were kind of thrown into hands-on courses. And so I had a lot of labs with dissection of animals every single week. But you know, it was Delaware. It's you know, big into farming, especially chickens. And so that emphasis was so much on farm animals, domestic animals, and it really wasn't hitting on what I wanted. And so I looked around, and of course I'm from New Jersey, and I looked back at Rutgers, and they had a strong curriculum in wildlife management, natural resource management. And that's the thing that sort of set off the bells for me. So even really kind of not knowing too much about wildlife science, but I was attracted to it, and you know, spent the rest of my college career at Rutgers, and then had my master's at West Virginia, working on a, you know, real sort of independent project. So and never looked back. And so that's my fairly simple story.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, so for some of you, this might be reiteration, but if you want to dive in a little bit more, that'd be great. So how's your career differed or stay the same from what you imagined it would be when you first started out? And you can take that in whatever direction you want to.
Wildlife rehabilitation is very different than insurance. I could start there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very different. When I started in wildlife rehabilitation, I was working for a center that didn't have staff. It was all volunteers. And so that's probably, I think, the biggest thing that has changed, at least in my field over the last 30 years, where it was primarily a vocation, an avocation 30 years ago. And now many more people are able to make a living at it, whether through the way I'm doing it, which is with a county park commission, or starting small nonprofits to fund the organizations and pay staff at the organizations. So it's grown as a profession by leaps and bounds over the last 40 years, which has been the huge change.
So for me, I guess I could start with, I got my first wildlife job in 2017, and I was working with horseshoe crabs. And then this morning, about an hour ago, a little more than an hour ago, I was banding wood ducks, which was really exciting. And I never had any expectation to work with waterfowl at all, and that's what my current job is. I never had any expectation to work with horseshoe crabs. I'm kind of just, opportunities present themselves, and I have been able to pick and choose certain ones, and I've loved every bit of it. But I guess I didn't really have many expectations. I just knew I wanted to work with wildlife, and that's working out for me. So I'm just very excited to be where I'm at. and thankful for the opportunities that keep coming my way.
I am considering myself still just getting into this field since I just graduated. I had some opportunities to work with the Pennsylvania Game Commission last summer as an intern. And also I got to work with Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, which is in PA. I just finished an internship with them. So I'm still accruing experience, but I will say that with those, so far, those two different wildlife experiences I've had and the federal experience I have yet to have, I am anticipating experiencing a lot of diversity within each of those organizations, whether that's due to their structure as a private, federal, or state organization, or if it's just because of where it's geographically located. But to Josh's point, if you're in the wildlife field, you have to be flexible and just be open to the opportunities that present themselves and just make the most of it. And you'll continue to find your way. So yeah, I'm still finding what this field is kind of opening itself into, but I'm definitely very excited to see, where I grow with that and how it continues.
Right. And did you expect to be moving to Montana?
Not at all. Not at all.
That's a surprise.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very much so. And I think I'll build on what everybody else said. I agree totally with Josh saying, I had no expectations. I just wanted to work with wildlife. And as Christine said, I'm still accruing experience. And as Diane said, I've seen wildlife rehabilitation change a lot over the last 4 years. And even the field of wildlife medicine. I was talking with some students this morning that 30, 40 years ago, there were only like 2 or 3 state wildlife vets. And now something like 44 states have wildlife vets. So it's really grown in many ways. And I would say, along with that, no expectations, but being flexible and doing things through my career. I've taught at 2 veterinary schools. I've worked in small animal practice. I've worked at 4 different wildlife rehabilitation centers. I've worked at a zoo. I worked in a rabies diagnostic lab. I worked for 2 state wildlife programs, a variety of different things. I've contracted to write wildlife publications, lots of different things that are out there. It makes it sound like I can't hold a job, but I have held some for over 20 years. So it's possible. It's just a lot of them overlap. There's just so many neat things to do in wildlife now that there's a lot of opportunities out there, and none of them were at all what I expected. One just led to another.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's been a lot of change. Some of us are older than you 2 youngsters and youngsters, so we have probably a larger scope to look at. How is my career different than what I imagined? When I was right out of college, I thought I was going to move to Montana. I didn't think I was going to spend my whole career working in New Jersey. So that's obviously a big difference. But a career in wildlife biology, wildlife management is, I don't think anyone is going to say that it's boring. It changes, the problems change, the issues change over time. I've been in my job over 35 years. Going into it, you might expect that this is going to be a field work sort of position. You're going to be out banding wood ducks at dawn, which is great. And those opportunities are absolutely there. And it is some of the most fun work that we do. I think early on, I think one of my professors, probably in grad school, said that wildlife management is people management. And you know, you don't want to hear that when you're 25, but it's the truth. Because in order to get conservation done, you've got to work with the public, you've got to work with a lot of people, and that's rewarding too. I've kind of fought to keep my position as a keep some of my field work and not just do administrative work, because you know really those are the rewards as well. So it is a lot about people management, but that's a good thing, and that's how you know grow conservation. How you get conservation done is by having teams of people who are going to be not on your side but really on wildlife side. So it's it can be a lot of different things. And I think that's what we've all heard, and that's a good thing.
Okay, and can you share a brief example of a professional obstacle, challenge, failure, whatever you want to call it, that you faced in your career and how you overcame it or got to the other side of it?
Honestly, my biggest challenge is working where I work, which is for a county government, is, and Kathy can probably, since she works for a state government, can sympathize with this or empathize with this, is that every time the administration changes, I was at least justifying my existence every 4 years, which is a challenge to do that. So, you know, why do we need this here? And why are we paying for this? And so you had to learn how to tap dance backwards very fast and be able to justify your existence every 4 years and convince them to not close you and continue working. That's been my biggest challenge. I'm not going to miss that one.
So I guess for me, the professional obstacle I've faced so far, it kind of relates to balancing comfort and growth. So in this, I think most of us that go into this field really love wildlife, that we love working with wildlife. And you might have certain wildlife that you're more in love with. And so an opportunity might arise that seems perfect. And you wish you could spend your whole life doing it, but it might not be what's going to support you for the rest of your life, or be the best option for you to continue growing. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the opportunity that presents itself is not exactly what you love, but it's the next best thing to get you to where you love. So being strategic and figuring out what to do as your next step, and when to take the next step and when not to take the next step, that is the biggest obstacle I'm currently facing and I have faced. For a quick example, my first job was unpaid with wildlife, and now I find myself actually turning down higher paying jobs than the one I have, in an attempt to be strategic about my next steps forward. So that can be really difficult.
The biggest challenge I faced so far was recently when I was working with Hawk Mountain Sanctuary a few months ago. As soon as I got there in May, I started working 2 days after I graduated. I was really excited, but I was anticipating, I was like, I'm just going to have to be intentional about adjusting to this change and getting used to being a recent graduate and what that feels like before I just, full-fledged just get thrown into work. And as soon as I get there, all the other trainees or interns, as you can also call them interns, but they're all very friendly. There's about 6 or 8 of them, and some of them are internationals from Spain, Argentina, and Italy, all super sweet. But everybody that's a trainee there, it's not, they're not recent graduates or somebody that's currently in college. It's more like people that are in their late 20s, usually early 30s. And so I was very intimidated by how much experience they had. The fact that they already had their master's and or PhD, or they were going towards their PhD. And I was trying to not let myself get intimidated and feel defeated that I had not yet done enough. And, you know, tell myself, you have to start somewhere. And these people all had to start somewhere. And everybody, as you can see, even today, everybody has a different path in getting to where they are. And that everybody in that is so equally important to the process of this field. You know, we need all of those people, all of those brains to work together. So I think my challenge was just, to be honest, putting my pride down and approaching that situation with humility and realizing that I still have a lot of areas I need to grow in, and that's good. And to not be quick to feel, you know, anxious or defeated, but to just believe in myself and know that, you know, if I've had all these experiences so far and that I'm here right now with these people, that means, you know, I can do this. I can learn from these people and use them as resources.
Wow, that's great. Keep that attitude is my advice to you. So, I would say I feel really fortunate. I don't think I can't think of big obstacles that I encountered in my career. Probably the biggest thing was because I worked most of my career for not-for-profits or for wildlife rehabilitation, that it was financial restrictions. So didn't make a big salary when I started, nor did I for most of my career, and often had very limited resources with which to do my job. So, however, that in both ways that ended up benefiting me, I think. One, because with limited resources, I feel it ended up making me a better diagnostician. I couldn't run a lot of expensive tests on my animals, so I learned to observe the patients better, to palpate them, to use what limited resources I did have to figure out what was going on, and likewise to treat them. I couldn't afford the fancy treatments or some of the more expensive surgical tools, and so it was adapting and coming up with things that did work. So I think I learned a lot that way and became more proficient myself that way. Similarly, because I wasn't making a lot of money, I found side jobs. I worked in small animal practice, and that gave me the ability to work more with clients and to interact with them and to improve my surgical skills, doing small animal surgeries and routine things, so that I could then apply those to my wildlife patients. So while that in a way was an obstacle, it was really a great opportunity as well.
A lot of wisdom. So I've worked for state government, but that doesn't mean unlimited money or unlimited staff. In fact, because wildlife conservation has typically been funded solely by hunters and anglers, the funding for non-game management, endangered and non-game management, has always been limited. The Endangered Species Program in New Jersey has done pretty well over the years, but even right now we're actually at a low point with about 12 staff. So I would say one of the biggest obstacles in my line has been the limited staff, limited money. As people have retired in recent years, they're not necessarily replaced, or those replacements are coming in and doing a different job. So lacking staff, and I work on raptors in New Jersey. We've gotten around that by building up a volunteer corps, and our biggest one is for the Bald Eagle Project, where we are monitoring. I'll say we as a team are monitoring 250 nesting pairs throughout the state, from High Point to Cape May. There's no way that me as the single person working for the state can do that. So we have a partner nonprofit, And we have about 130 volunteers who have adopted nests, and they are the ones collecting that data. They're monitoring nests statewide from January to July. So we've been able to maintain our database as the eagle population has grown from 1 pair to 250 pairs, really without skipping a beat. And it's because we've got those teams. And I think that's a great tool, no matter what job you're in. Is there are a lot of people who care about wildlife and they can't all work in the field, but they will take on those jobs. And especially, if it's something they have a particular interest in, whether it's birds or herps or even butterflies or plants. There's a great opportunity for citizen science and enrolling those people. And I think one of the challenges is maintaining that, and you need to have, very good communication. There needs to be a back and forth. That's part of the reward that volunteers get, is that they are part of the team. They get to see the results of the full monitoring. And when you're talking about monitoring eagles, that's a reward in itself. And people get very experienced, they get very knowledgeable, because they're doing the job that kind of we want to do, which is out there sitting in front of an eagle nest and watching it for hours. So I think that's, on the whole, having some limitations, and we've all got limitations, and finding that solution that can help us long term and help the species that we're working on.
Kathy, I love that term that you used. I hadn't heard that before, citizen science. I think that's really valuable, just as a concept for our students to understand that as they're working to build their experiences while they're student in school, that there are so many volunteer related opportunities that they could take advantage of to really get that field experience early and often.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this will be our last question for today. So if you could drop a pearl of wisdom, what advice do you have for current DelVal students who hope to work in your field after graduation?
I'm going to go back to what Kathy said about the citizen science. We have at the Wildlife Center an intern program and a volunteer program. And my recommendation would be to find a facility that's either near you or that their work interests you, and get involved in one of those programs, either volunteering or interning. Our intern program happens to be an unpaid intern program, but you get 12 weeks of in-depth hands-on experience. And where most people look at wildlife rehabilitation and go, oh, cool, we get to feed the baby birds and the baby rabbits and the baby this. You get to see actually what is involved in 24-hour-a-day care of these animals, and why they come to us and how they interact with the world around them, which is mostly human and human-caused problems. And then you get to see what interactions don't end well for them and which interactions generally do end well for them. So volunteering would be right up there with the things to do to get involved, I think, in any of our fields.
I'm going to build on that. I think, there's so much advice I'd like to give, but I'd say just real quickly, always work your hardest, and be determined and love whatever species you work with. But beyond that, building on what was said prior, diversify your experiences and do as much as you can to try and not only build your resume and your knowledge, but to figure out where you want to go, what you want to do. And you can do this in multiple ways. You can volunteer, you can get the internships. But another way to do this, let's for example, say you're getting a biology degree at DelVal, perhaps you should look into taking a couple extra classes in different topics, different subjects. And that can actually help you in your future when you're looking for a career. I know that to become a federal wildlife biologist with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it's not necessarily you have a biology degree or we're going to hire you for that. You might need a certain number of credits in different subjects to be able to qualify for those different jobs. So if you like plants, don't be afraid to push for a few more credits in plant-related subjects or mammals or wildlife in general. You know, push for the more credits, push for more volunteering, push for internships, and get as much as you can.
My 2 pieces of advice is establish and maintain networking connections and never compare your path to anyone else's. This coming to Ignite, this event, I attended my sophomore year, which would have been 2 years ago. And that's how I met a woman named Lauren Ferrari, who works for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And she is the one person who advocated for me and encouraged me to apply for the Pennsylvania Game Commission internship that I then was accepted for that following summer. And I think that kickstarted my wildlife career. It gave me the confidence that I needed and just reaffirmed my passions for this field. And a lot of that was meeting her in the first place, coming to opportunities like this to meet people and network, and maintaining that connection with her. And she offered several times for me to come out and help her band ducks and all sorts of other stuff that is really exciting. So definitely establishing your connections and maintaining those, because they say the wildlife field is small and sometimes it's who you know, that's how you can get a job sometimes. And then the other thing too, like I had mentioned a little earlier, not comparing your path to anyone else's, because everyone is on a different path. People have different priorities. Some things are more important to some people versus others, and it's going to look different from person to person. But that's so important and necessary in this field, because if everyone was the same, and if you were the exact same as the person next to you who you deemed successful, there would be no diversity in this field that we really need. So just be confident and keep after it.
Wow, I hardly have anything to say now, but I'll come up with that. That's fantastic advice, and I'll just echo it all. From the volunteerism, I would say, that's where you get the different experiences. Literally 5 of the jobs I've had, I started out volunteering in them and eventually got hired, not even always expecting to. And likewise, I just thought about it. I realized I've only ever had to actually interview for one of my professional jobs in my life, because I've known people and have moved into them from meeting them at conferences, from knowing them from past, experiences where we volunteered together or knew them through other professional networks. So I will echo that statement about building your professional network, go to the different events, get to know your professors and your people in school, and along even the one job I did interview for, I got there and the director of the center, it ended up, she had worked at the zoo. This was in Illinois, but we had both worked at the same zoo in Oklahoma at the same time, and she knew who I was. So it was, and that job, though, while that was my first job in wildlife rehabilitation, I was already a veterinarian, but they were advertising for a vet tech. So similar to Josh starting out in a volunteer position and moving in, I was like, I know I'm qualified to be a vet tech. I'm a veterinarian, so this is my my shoe in the door, and it works. So don't be afraid to go beneath yourself in a little while, or if you need to, or do volunteer in a position to try it out, to get to know people. And I would say, in building that professional network, keep in mind, one of the things is just always be open and positive and be nice to everybody, because you never know. I didn't particularly like that person at the zoo, and I had no idea that they were going to end up being my boss. And that is one of the reasons I left, because we didn't get along that well. but it got me started in the field. And you never know. And I now work for one of my former students. So be nice to everybody, whether it's your student or beneath you or ahead of you. So yeah, don't be afraid to try things, volunteer, party on, and get to network. Right.
Yeah, you guys are good. A lot of good advice. Erica, you reminded me that when I first took this job for New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, it was the Endangered Species Program. I couldn't have imagined a better job, but it was for a title that was lower than technician. It was the lowest title in state government, and I had a master's degree. But I knew that's what I wanted, and yeah, sometimes you do have to, get through those low-paying jobs. So along the lines of some of what some of you have already said, but one thing that I felt like I didn't do well enough is developing my own skills that you can do on your own time, such as birding, herping, plant identification, invertebrates, if that's your thing. But some of the best people that I've seen come along for seasonal jobs are those who already have skills that you don't need schooling. You need to put the time in yourself. So people who become really good birders, herpers, plant ID, can you run equipment on your own? Can you run a motorboat? Those are things that when you apply for a seasonal job could be the thing that put you over the top, because you're gonna, when we see people coming in for seasonal jobs, we really want someone we can really hand a job to and it'll get done. I'll reiterate the taking the volunteer or intern opportunities whenever you can, because you're going to learn a lot. Even if you've already got a lot of the great skills that you're bringing to a job, you're going to learn a lot and hopefully be able to work with a team. I think that one thing that is lacking is that not everybody can afford to take a volunteer job or an unpaid internship, because not everybody's got that cushion of money to sit on. And in those cases, maybe look for the places that are in your community that you can, work more closely to home, but will still get you there. And there's a lot of citizen science kind of projects happening in county parks and in communities that are also going to be good experience.
Well, this is just such a great panel. I so appreciate each one of you and sharing your story and your wisdom. And I just think that we've got such a variety of perspective here. So I know our students are going to benefit from this Ignite recording. And again, students, please feel free to reach out to CSPD if you'd like to get in touch with any of these folks. And best of luck to each one of you as you continue on with the good work that you're doing at every level and at every phase of your career. So that's the end of our recording. Thank you.